guys, we finished our main lesson for Man and Animal with live education in January, and I thought I would do a video. I kind of feel like I'm I'm getting backed up with video ideas because there's so much on my mind. I'm doing a lot and I wish that I could show you or tell you, but I don't have the bandwidth to do all of the videos. So here's the thing, whatever is most important to you, if you need or want a video on something, I will prioritize that and make it so. If it's a shorter idea, I'll compile several things and answer in sort of an array of a video. But for now, what I want to do is show you our main lesson for a few reasons, because I think Waldorf is a little out there. It's a little different than what most people are used to, but many people are curious about it. It's not only an investment, because whenever you move to do something different with a curriculum, every homeschool mom knows that there's going to be a monetary and a time investment involved. But in this case, it's also a really different approach to teaching. And I think that it's worth putting it out there and showing you, mainly because I don't think I'm doing it right. I don't think any of us do. And I want to have a discussion about that really short, about Waldorf and why I'm okay with us not doing it the right way, because we're not a Waldorf school. Essentially, that's the short answer. But then I want to flip the camera around, walk you through the books we've used, show you our unit studies calendar that I've been keeping, opening up my main lesson book and showing you what we've done with regards to art and research, how we've merged the two on paper, and then show you some of the art materials that were involved in making these things. First, I don't think that I brought this up in any of my Waldorf discussions in the past, and I haven't had that many. But one thing that really struck me when I was talking to the rep for live education, that's one of several curriculums that you can purchase, but live education is a little bit different because you cannot purchase their works until you talk to them. You have to fill out an application online, not an application, but you need to tell them why you want to do Waldorf, because their live education books are not meant for homeschool. So their opinion is that if they're going to sell you something that they believe to be good curriculum, but because it is different curriculum, they want to talk to you and make sure that you know what you'd be getting yourself into. Because I'm certain that the rep has had conversations with homeschool moms who have probably come to the conclusion that that would be a lot of heavy lifting or really not up their alley. So that's kind of important to know, that the other ones, there's several online that you can purchase, but live education specifically, you can't purchase until you talk to them, because they do not advertise themselves as a homeschool curriculum. They're a school and they sell you what they use in their school, which I think is sort of something that people don't realize or understand. That's why it's a little weird when you go through them. And having done this for only a few months, but being really interested in continuing on with it, also knowing that I think I'm going to morph a little bit because every homeschool is different, I kind of wanted to walk you through some of the things that are important to me for Waldorf and what I like about Waldorf. I've spoken before about the interesting connection between art and research, and I like how they're joined together, particularly when it gets to science. I like the idea of the child using their own artwork and writing up their own research, not doing any fill in the blanks, not doing workbooks necessarily, but creating their own research book. And I really like that about Waldorf. And then it's all of their original work. I think we remember better when we observe something and when we draw out a sketch. It doesn't have to be pretty. I'll show you the artwork. You don't have to spend a lot of time on it. It's really just to get your mind, your information essentially through to your hand and writing it out, because then that shows you that you've remembered it, if what you're doing is your own original work from your own memory. And then it helps with a lot of other things, narration, writing, all of those things without prompting the child. Well, a little bit of prompting at younger ages. The child has to produce their own work, and I like that. It also slows us down. I am not a rushed homeschool mom. And we are okay with spending, I think what we like to do in the afternoon is spending a good block of time on one thing. And some kids don't want to do that. It just won't work for them. But it does work for us, especially in the afternoon after we've done our core, after we've worked through our French and we've done our reading and we've finished our math, which seems sort of kind of schedule-like. after lunch, it's almost like a relief. It's like recess to go and do this research of our own, to do the artwork attached to it, to talk, to listen to books about it, for me to talk to Morgan about things, because a lot of what you do as a Waldorf homeschool parent is learn a lot about the subject first and then teach the child, not with a book. I'm not as good at doing that. I usually have a book with me and we reference. But Morgan's also very visual, and so I like to show her pictures and I like to read books to her. So it might not be my own voice that's coming out, but she is receiving information from me and listening and kind of taking it all in. And then we have narration, we have discussion, and over the days we have writing and we have art. Usually it's art first and then we write over our art. And somebody who's way better at doing this is Pepper and Pine. So if you want to see how it's actually done, the process of the art and the why and the how, she has fantastic videos for that. Also, Waldorf leaves us wide open. That feels like it to me, wide open to study what we want, how we want within the lesson. There is an unbelievable amount of leeway, endless number of books that you can choose, that you can pull into the main lesson, specifically geared toward your child's interest, how they visually learn, how many picture books you might want to use along with readers. I really like that freedom to choose for myself. And then I mentioned that I'm probably not doing this right. I don't think that if you're not trained in Waldorf, I don't think you can do it perfectly, but I'm not sure that that's the point either. But particularly, I'll show you one book that I have. And when I flip the camera around, I'll kind of flip to a few pages within this book. I've shown it to you before. It's Waldorf Schools, Upper Grades, and High School. This is volume 2. Volume 1 is for the littles, and I don't have a little anymore, so I didn't bother to buy the book. If I were doing it right, I would really be doing everything according to how Rudolf Steiner, the creator of Waldorf, wants you to teach your kids in a Waldorf school. And there's some things that are a little hokey, they're a little weird. But if you think about where Waldorf originated from, what era, this was sort of the era of men discovering psychology and how we learn. And this is the Freud period, right? And so some of the stuff, they threw it against the wall and a lot of it didn't stick. For instance, I don't think that Freud is studied so much for his psychology as he is for his philosophy now, because it just doesn't work. So there are some things that Rudolf Steiner said or thought that over the test of time, it just didn't make it. Those things are either incorrect or perhaps needed to be tweaked a little. This book helps me cull through those things and pick, they're essentially essays. Some are how-tos, some are histories, background, and those helped me decide what I want from Waldorf, and then thank you, I got it from here. That's essentially what I want from any curriculum, is I want to take what I want and need from it for Morgan, and then I can roll with it because I feel confident enough to do that. Not in every class. I won't feel confident to do that in biology. I'll need a lot more hand-holding, and I'll need perhaps a more structured style for even me to learn. But this is the way that I'm comfortable teaching pretty much every subject with Morgan in the middle school grades. For now. Don't we all kind of have a caveat of for now or until I change my mind? But this is the way it works for us, and this is the way we are, and it works. We like it this way. So I will flip the camera around and I'll show you all of the stuff that we did for Man and Animal, the first half. The second half is coming in another month or two. It's this book that's helped me think about the teaching style as a purpose while also easily sifting out some of the ideas that feel too goofy to me. It's easy to remove those ideas from Waldorf and keep the learning style, which is learning by doing, by explaining, by open study, a documentation through art, narration, and original work. And you don't have to read all of them. I think I've read about half of them. They're from all different persons who are related to Waldorf schools in some way, or are teaching or have taught. One of the things that Waldorf focuses on is having, right here it says, a profound respect for human beings. And that includes everything that you study. Also, as the human and animal main lesson, you have not only respect for the human, but how the human relates. Everything that the kid learns is in relation to their own person. And so how do they relate to animals, and how does the animal relate to them? And there's some things that are a little bit strange. Here's another prep book that I ended up really not using, and I likely won't buy another Charles Kovacs because it seems a little outdated for me. There's kind of a separation of animals based off of, I'm not sure that it's very science-like. It's more to get the child to relate to the animal rather than actually being biology. And I made the choice to take that out because I'm not sure that that would be helpful for our purposes here. A lot of people in Waldorf use this book. It is a helpful companion to the main lessons that you would learn in Waldorf. I did notice that I benefited from the introduction, but nothing more than that. So it gave me an idea of how I want to teach, but I do want to take some of their spirituality out of it because it just doesn't match with ours. These are the live education books. You know, I probably should lift this up a little bit. Here we go. And with Human and Animal, there are 3. There's the revised edition and the companion volume. So this walks you through what you would be doing and why. It gives you an idea of the weeks of the lessons and the materials needed. Here I had highlighted, actually this is the only thing I highlighted in this particular book, in short, an imaginative sense of the whole and its intimate relationship to the human being. And I did take that to heart, and I think you'll see that in some of the books that I chose, because we have animals here. We live on a farmstead, and we really do see some interesting connections between human and animal, human and insect around here on a farm that is worth talking about, it's worth documenting, and that worked very well for us. And then the other book, the companion volume, will walk you through. It will walk you through each thing that you want or need to study. In our case, we moved away from many of these because I made the decision to have Morgan, if we're going to learn from the child's perspective, I wanted Morgan to choose what she already has seen on the farm and what she knows. And so I found these online. Let's see, I'm not sure if we used this one. Yeah, we did. They're fantastic you can get them for any state. And so Morgan went through and highlighted all of the things. The little green dot is everything that she has personally seen on our farm. And then from there, she chose each time we wanted to do a new animal. I had her choose what animal it was that she wanted to do, because it matters not. It really doesn't matter. You can't go wrong by choosing any of the animals that you are interested in and know. This one is one that we will use for our botany class coming up in the next year. But I found these to be helpful because I took the idea of we want to learn about animals, but I want to learn about the animals on our farm first. We did make an exception to the rule, and that was studying the life of an octopus because of one of the books that we chose to read that we were interested in. These are our read-alouds, and I always want to pick a fun fiction one, but I also really am interested in the fun nonfiction books, and as many that I can get, that I can find that Morgan can read for herself, which is one coming up here that I'm really super glad I found. I picked a sci-fi because that goes really well with the Animals and People selection of essays from Orion magazine. If you guys follow me, then you've seen this before. This is essentially selected essays that have been featured in Orion magazine over time, and one of them was Cy Montgomery. And this deep intellect short story was the idea, or gave her the idea, to write the book, The Soul of an Octopus. Because we read Deep Intellect, which is short, it's a very short story. With her essay, it's just amazing the things that she has witnessed firsthand. And it's these firsthand accounts with interactions with animals that we are interested in studying, as well as then moving on to learning about the animal. Because we read her short story, I had decided, instead of doubling down and reading this, which I think we're going to get to later on, we did use it for photos. Let's see, we used it for photos and some of her experiences here of the one particular octopus that, this is somebody else, but they like to grab onto you and hug you and assess you this way. And so it was really helpful when we read about it. it was really helpful with having an image from her book. Because we did the short story, I decided to switch to Peter Wohlleben's The Inner Life of Animals. I am so glad I did. Each one of his chapters, and this is dense. This is a super dense book. This took a long time to get through, but it was really engaging. We really enjoyed it. And each chapter is on a different animal and something that he has witnessed over his lifetime of research. And then he takes different feelings or attitudes that we normally attribute to humans, like gratitude, lies, and deception. I see that with our new dog. It's hilarious. That they have fun, that they do interrelate with other species. We've seen that too on our farm. We've seen bunnies and pheasants play together and jump on each other and play. It's amazing. So watching different species relate to each other, really, it made sense. As we were reading this book, we kept saying, we've seen this, we've watched this before. If you want to sit together and have a cup of tea, the audio version is fantastic. It's totally worth listening to. And that fed into how Morgan wanted to treat her studies of the animals that we did in our main lesson in here, as well as which ones she wanted to pick. We just finished this book, and these two, between the two of these, they were both very, very dense. This I would equate to, not in genre or style of writing, but I would equate each page of this book to be very similar to The Hobbit, to J.R. Tolkien, where if you miss a page in Tolkien's writing, you're going to miss something. And same with Jules Verne. If you miss a page or two, you're going to miss a significant portion of the story. This book is a prime example for Morgan. Every single word counts. Every single one. There's no fluff. And I thought that that was a great example here. But I did at one point, let's see, I think I only did this for a few. I was highlighting all the words that I knew Morgan would have trouble with. And just on page 3, there's interminable, credulous, incredulous, savants, satirical, parodied, adjured, contemporaries, lubrications, eddy. There's hyperborean, abyss, resuscitated, a procès-verbal, nautical leagues. And so just in a couple of pages, there are many, many words that the kid doesn't know. But here's the thing. The story, I kept checking in with Morgan, and it's so engaging. It's okay if the kid only gets 70% of it. This is still a fantastic book. So we did those two. We listened to those together. I was really, really happy to have found a nonfiction book that Morgan can read. And I mentioned this book, I think, previously in another video. And if you know Jean Craighead George, she is the writer of all of the books that many of us know. One is Julie of the Wolves, and I know many of you read her, but this is Craighead George's nonfiction of her growing up with these animals and why she became who she was and why she became a writer for children about animals in relation to humans. And so her Tarantula in My Purse and 172 Other Wild Pets was just right up our alley. And there's pictures, the stories, each chapter is a different event. Their dad's always coming home and putting some animal in the bathtub. I think the goose ended up in the bathtub too, or maybe it was an alligator. Oh, and then there's a little ferret, which is kind of interesting because we did the study on black-footed ferrets. That I'll also show you the artwork on that again today. This made Morgan laugh. She loved the stories. It was very engaging and totally worth the read. Very short, it's only 133 pages. From here, I had chosen something a little out of the ordinary for our study, Inside Out and Back Again, because I wanted to add the feeling of not just animals and humans, but humans need to be kind to each other as well. And Inside Out and Back Again is some really tough stuff written in verse, which is just beautiful and fun, easy. What I was looking for was kind of a win because Morgan had gone through a pretty big slog with an earlier read. And I picked this book not only because it worked really well in relation to how we need to behave as humans, but it also gave her a break from real heavy reading. From there, she went on to The Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus, which I mentioned before. I knew she was reading it every time I heard her laugh because it was so funny. She needed a break at the very, very end. I think she was tired one day, and so I read about 30 pages aloud to her, and we both ended up crying. It's wonderful. Everything about this book is totally worth your attention. So those were all the things that we read attached to the main lesson. And I feel like that's a lot. We did a lot of afternoons where we were sitting and listening to stories together, which is something we really enjoy doing. And I find that Morgan uses this information in conversations about other topics later, weeks, months later. And so I know this is working well because she is using these books elsewhere in her life and in her studies. I had another one. Oh, here. This is a book for other options. So we didn't have time to do this, but I'm halfway through this book and I keep getting distracted. So I've decided I'm going to stop and then I'll come back to it maybe in the summer. But The Secret Life of Lobsters is so engaging. Who knew that lobsters could be so interesting? It is a long discussion about lobsters and the science behind it and their behavior and their weirdness. They're just crazy. They're really strange animals. Completely worth the read. So if you have a older reader, this would be a fantastic book to add. I'll add on to this video because there were some research books that I needed, got them out of the library. We used them, they're fantastic. We will probably get them back out again when we do the second half of Man and Animal. And then here is our unit studies and how we've been doing. Here's where we did Man and Animal. It's suggested to do 3 weeks and then 3 weeks. But we took a full 4 weeks because it was really interesting. The books that we had chosen, it took us a while to get through it, but none of this is a rush. It doesn't matter if we take an extra week. So here's where we are. And now we're going into March, so we're going back into our second half of geography. We did local and regional, and now with live education, we'll do state and country here. Then we will move on. We will be finished pretty much with live education in April, and then May here is our study time for testing. Now let's get to the fun art part. I guess there's a couple books that we used for art to help us along, and one is this seems like a silly book, but it actually really does help with drawing. So does the Drawing Simple Forms book from Live Education. I found this to be really helpful. It kind of walks you through how to create all the animals using basic simple shapes. So I relied on Live Education Drawing Simple Animal Forms book, as well as this is Morgan's. She chose it a couple years ago and she brought this up to help herself. Let's see, I think we did the bunny. I think we did our bunny based off of this. Oh no, we used the squirrel. And there is one thing that I used in here that some of you will remember from our geography main lesson. And I would love to do a flip through of this, but it's so visual. I think it would hurt the artist who spent a lot of time doing this book or creating it. But I'll show you a few things that I had shown in geography. We took this image essentially and used this as an idea for one of our main lesson pages. Actually, I think it was this one in our book. And it kind of was similar to this as well. So I'll show you that. But we use that we use this frequently. This is not just for geography. This is really, really fun. And then here were some books that we used to give us some ideas for our own, because we're in the prairie. We're in the not very cool part of North Dakota. So when you think North Dakota, you think the Badlands and President Roosevelt and that scrubby area where all the buffalo roam. That's on the west side. We're on the quiet, very flat eastern side. And this book is just wonderful for it. Actually, that's even more rolling hills than we have, but it really, this is what summer looks like here. It really does look like this. And so we took some of these ideas and we used them. I think we used them for the deer in here. And then this will be for people. When we want to start drawing more people, I found that these are really, really great, that you can kind of copy those if you want and practice. Here's our main lesson book. And let's see, we had started, I've shown you a lot of this stuff, but okay. It started with human and animals. So this was our write-up. And in fact, this image here, I think came from the front. Yeah. So I took this idea of doing the earth for human and animal. and painted this, and then Morgan copied it, and this was our write-up. This was the beginning of Human and Animal. And here is our squirrel. I think I flipped through some of this. I hadn't finished the rabbit yet. It's hard to do some of this art. I think I'm more comfortable with watercolors, and every time I try pencil, it's a little weird. But here's the squirrel that you might recognize from Morgan's book. Oh, we got the bunny from there too. Yep, I did the bunny from there. And then we did the squirrel, and I tried to do it opposite, which was kind of neat. And I tried to do color here, and it didn't quite work out, but that doesn't matter. We don't care. And this is Morgan's write-up. She did all of this. She did the research. She chose to do the writing. And as she was speaking, I would be typing it, and then she would look to see, I'd read it back to her, and she would add or take away or edit or whatever. And then I would write it down, and she would copy it. So that's how it worked. So she first chose the fox squirrel, and then the American robin. And there's all the bunnies outside. So she wanted to do the eastern cottontail that we have here on the farm. And we finished our write-up there. And then we started with the common raccoon, because we have funny stories about raccoons here. And then here is where the personal geographies book came in handy. We took those ideas and drew overhead imagery. We drew essentially where our farm region is. And then I had Morgan write a poem, because Morgan wrote 2 poems in the 4th grade, both of which I think are really, really nice poems, very fun. And I like to show Morgan that she doesn't need rules to do a thing. We don't need rules to write poetry before we start. We first, in my opinion, we need to write poetry, and then we can worry about other people's rules, because other people made those rules. There's no reason why you can't then make a rule at whatever age. And I believe that her creativity really kind of shines when I don't place a real hard system around her, and then we bring in the rules, and then we bring in the system. It may work completely differently for you, which is great. That's the really cool thing about homeschool, is it all depends. And then here is the last thing that we did, was our deer. And then I had taken a quote from Peter Volleman's Inner Life of Animals and written it here, because I think this is really poignant for what we're studying. Is it really true, as scientists have long maintained, that people are the only animals capable of enjoying a full range of emotions? Are we the only ones guaranteed a life of self-awareness? And that is by Peter Volleman. So I thought that was poignant, leaving that off to the side and then having the background here with the deer, because that's what our deer look like when the sun goes down at night. And then I wanted to compare. So we're not artists, we just enjoy practicing and we enjoy trying. And this was the beginning of watercolor. I had no idea what I was doing. And this is the Black-footed Ferret Research PBL that we did through Royal Fireworks Press. And then I think that we're really making headway. Morgan is using the whole of the page. So one thing that I want to stress is that having the child put color everywhere, use the entire thing. That's what she's doing. I think it's helpful for the mind to be able to use all of your space and think about what you're doing and why. And I think my art is improving, and it's really, really fun. I had mentioned that you could do this very cheaply, and I didn't have the praying colors yet, but I had them before. These are a set of 16 for, I think I got them for 12 bucks. They're really, really hyperpigmented compared to the stuff that you're used to buying. So these are swatches of the colors. That's really bright colors that kids, and this is just the basic colors, and from there you can make anything you want by mixing. And we mix on just plates that we got. And then you can mix anything you want on here and practice. And here we use the Winsor & Newton Coatman, and Morgan's favorite is My Leong paints. And we used the Tombo's Irrigitan pencils because these are the only pencils we have, and they're fine. They do great for us. I think this set of 30 was $30, so $1 a pencil, and they're really well pigmented, which is, it's important because the kid doesn't want to just keep scratching and scratching on paper and not have the color, a good color, come out. And if you want to invest in some watercolor paper, this wasn't that expensive. I got it online on Amazon, and it's 9 by 12. So what you can do is, if you want, you can use the whole paper, which is fun for kids to use a bigger brush. Use a bigger brush then. But you can cut it in 4 if you want and make this last for quite some time. Another book I have for Waldorf is Painting and Drawing in Waldorf Schools. I began to use this quite a lot in the beginning, maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks, mainly to think about things for myself, practice drawing the way they do, practice using the whole paper because I had never used the whole paper before. I didn't paint before this. And so I found this very helpful, and I've quickly moved on from it. Once you start enjoying mixing your own colors and using the whole page, you sort of kind of move away really quickly. But if you're unfamiliar, this is really a step-by-step approach by grade, by style, and it walks you through according to the traditional Waldorf lesson plans. So you could use this and go through your entire, from kindergarten to grade 8. You wouldn't need anything else other than that. Unfortunately, I don't use that much anymore. But art is really opening up our aperture, not only to how we paint, but what we paint and how we consider the topics we're painting. And it's about learning to consume the whole page, paint and draw everywhere. And then Morgan loves this book. So we'll use this for an idea book for art. And we will definitely use some of the images here, probably the buffalo. And what else? They have a fox. We need to do a fox. For our next main lesson for man and animal, we will likely use this. But we can use it for botany too, because there's just wonderful things here as well. So that's kind of it. That's it. Something also I didn't mention that I kind of want to change is the length of time that it takes for us to do a main lesson painting. I want to shorten it, maybe even down to sketches, because unless Morgan wants to. So we can always do long paintings, but what I don't want to do is all long paintings, because sometimes our mind is where we want to write, and we want to remember, we want to write down what we've learned and move on. And I want to pay attention to moving at the right pace for both of us. That's what this is all about, is learning and moving at the right pace. So there you have it. Thanks for watching, you guys. See ya.